this video, we're going to be talking about the anatomy and functions of the eye. So this over here on this paper is the lateral view of the eye. So we're going to be traveling in the way on how light enters into the eye. So the first part that light enters through is the cornea. The cornea is a clear area that covers the iris and the pupil. We'll get to those parts later. The cornea is the one that also protects the eye against bacteria that's trying to enter it. Next comes the iris. So you see this brown part located in my eye that's surrounding this black part. Well, that brown part is known as the iris. So you might be wondering, why do people have different colored irises? That's because basically the pigmentation located in the retina is the one that determines the color of the eye. So a certain type of pigment would determine if you have black eye. A certain pigment would determine if you have a brown eye, and if you have no pigment, then you would have blue eyes or green eyes. And then next would come the pupil. The pupil is the black part over here. However, it's not actually a part, it's a hole. This hole is how light enters in through. Now, the pupil is known for dilating, like expanding or contracting. Let's say if it's dark time, then what happens is the pupil would start to expand. The reason for its expansion is because the pupil is trying to get as much light as possible and try to provide at least some visual information to the occipital lobe, that's part of the brain. Then it contracts when there's too much light. If there's too much light, it only wants to receive a certain amount of light, because if you receive too much light, like looking at the sun, it could cause eye damage. So after the iris and the pupil would then come the lens. The lens focuses light and can also change the size of it, like contracting and expanding, to be able to see from far distances and closer distances. On top of the lens and iris would be the ciliary muscle. The ciliary muscle is what makes the lens change the shape and allows it to contract and expand. Now, you might be wondering, what are these muscles located over here? This top muscle, which is located over here, the lateral, and then the medial, located over here. These muscles are the ones that holds the eye in place. Next, we're going to be talking about the sclera. So you know this white part that's after the iris and pupil? This white part would be known as the sclera. It holds all of the frontal contents together and makes sure that the functions do not break or do anything wrong. So next, after that, this purple part over here would be known as the vitreous gel. This is the one that maintains the pressure of the eye and also makes sure the eye does not collapse on itself. If that happens, that would be pretty bad. You don't have an eye anymore. So basically, the vitreous gel just provides pressure so the eye can maintain the spherical object. The outer layer that surrounds the vitreous gel would be known as the retina, this yellow part located here. The retina is the one that gathers all the visual information and sends it to the optic nerve. The optic nerve is the one that sends the visual information to the occipital lobe. Now, and when traveling to the occipital lobe, as we see over here, it wraps. So the left occipital lobe is in charge of the right eye, and the right occipital lobe is in charge of the left eye. So it wraps. There's this indentation over here, and this indentation is known as the fovea. So the fovea is an indentation of the retina. The reason for this indentation is to be able to process the direct view that you're getting. So when light travels, it travels and hits the fovea directly. However, other parts, like at the corner of our eyes, will hit other parts of the retina, but not the fovea. The fovea is the one that differentiates against colors and can also calculate the wavelength so that it's able to communicate to the pupil whether to increase, whether to expand or contract. The wavelength calculation happens in the rods of the fovea, but then the cones of the fovea is the one that differentiate against the colors. So next, after the fovea, would come the choroid layer. The choroid layer, which is another surrounding layer of the vitreous gel, but this time it just surrounds the retina. Basically, what the choroid layer does is that it supplies the eye with blood, such as nutrients and oxygen. This way it is able to keep the eye healthy. And then finally, we would move into the optic nerve. The optic nerve is this part of the eye over here that sends signals towards the brain. So we talked about neurons and nerves and how they're able to send parts to the brain. Basically, this is sending visual information to the occipital lobe, and we just talked about how they wrap. After talking about the anatomy and the functions of the eye, we're now going to be moving to the disorders of the eye. So we can look at this. This over here would be the normal vision. Light enters in through the cornea, then through the iris, it enters into the hole of the pupil, goes through the lens, and then enters into the fovea, or the focal point. Basically, this is the anatomy of a normal eye. It reaches exactly at the fovea, and that way all the visual information is being processed. However, there's some common disorders that we can find. For example, we can take myopia. Myopia, although the light is being able to go through the lens, what's happening is the lens is just way too blurry, and because of that, it is not able to reach the focal point or the fovea. To do this, you need concave lens. So concave lens, like as part of the glasses, concave lens are the lens that allow you to be able to see regularly. The next part is hyperopia. Basically, what happens is the light is entering through it, but it's not exactly hitting the focal point, meaning that way too much light is being reached into the retina, and the focal point is moving away from the retina. A way to solve this is using convex lens. Basically, convex lens actually bulge out. It's also part of the glasses. So each glasses is pretty different because it can either contain concave lens or convex lens, depending on the person's eyes. Another disorder would be astigmatism. Basically, light is entering, but what the lens does is that it sends the light to different points of the eye. Because of that, there are many focal points, and the brain isn't exactly able to tell which part is actually which is the true focal point. Is it this point, this point, this point? No one knows. So basically, instead of having concave or convex lens, they need cylindrical lens. This is how it corrects the vision. That's also a type of lens that people use in glasses. When we're taking an image of something, for example, an apple, light takes it and enters through the lens. But the lens, instead of going straight like that, it reverses. And because of that, when it hits the focal point, it's actually in reverse mode. So then the information is sent through the optic nerve and then sent to the occipital lobe. But what happens is the visual cortex, the part of the occipital lobe, is able to reverse it back to the original that we found it, and hence is able to see it regularly. This is all about eyes and their anatomy and functions, but also the type of disorders.